All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time it is when you hear this message, I pray that you're poised to receive, to accept, and to respond to words of wisdom. Ashe. A little information can get you into a lot of trouble, can create a lot of problems for you. I'm reminded of a time when there was a lady who used to come and see me, and she knew a little bit about everything. But what she knew was um, uh, it, it was in isolation. The things that she knew were like trivia. They were like sound bites. It wasn't complete knowledge. So, for example, I remember once she came and she was telling me about she had gone to the mechanic. She had just come from the mechanic. And she said that the mechanic is trying to hustle her. That she went there, the car wasn't starting. He checked it out. He told her it was either the starter or the alternator. And when he priced it for her, it was, I don't know, let's just say it was like between $300 and $600 that it would be to fix it, depending on what the problem was. And so in her mind, it's like, hey, okay, you said it's the starter, the alternator, but what about the battery? And he says, well, it could be the battery, but it's probably not the battery because of this reason and that reason. But the battery was only going to cost, let's say, $100. And so she decided that this guy was in it for the money. She was going to get the $100 battery, and she had driven over and was very, proud about the fact that she had averted this scam, right? Well, the very next day, the battery had been totally drained, and she had to have her car towed to the mechanic again and have him actually replace either the starter or the alternator. I don't remember which one it was. But how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so the way she was approaching this car was also the way she approached Orisha, meaning she had a little information about all the different parts, but some information came from Santeria, some information came from this book she read, some information came from yoga and Chinese medicine. She was just cobbling all this stuff together, but was totally convinced that what she had pieced together was exactly what it was, and everybody else was trying to impose all these unnecessary constrictions upon her. And it was from these kinds of interactions that I started to see some of the classic struggles of the African-American Orisha devotee. And this has come to the fore in the last couple of days in at least two different instances that I've seen, and they're very popular right now on the internet, on social media. One of which is, involving an Ileke ceremony, and then the other is involving someone who is talking about you don't need to venerate your ancestors because, you should be dealing with your Ori, and if you listen to the people describe or explain why they're doing what they're doing, their reasoning and their logic it's reasonable. It makes sense, right? It isn't just foolishness that they're saying. It's just that it doesn't adhere to any system. As soon as you have a system, then it creates context for your practice, right? You can't have a practice without a system. People who have a practice without a system are like people who've got a lot of information and they're just trying to string it together according to their own whims. And I know part of this comes out of the fact that, like, for example, I'm from the hip hop generation, right? DJ Premier, Terminator X, my goodness, D Nice, Q-Tip. These guys were phenomenal producers and mix masters. They could bring sounds from everywhere and anywhere, and they could weave them into just a serious masterpiece, classical music and soundtracks and just noise. They could put it together and it just would be magnificent. And that's a lot of what we do as African Americans. When you think about our musical tradition, for example, we're able to integrate all kinds of things into something that's really cohesive, functional, and super unique. But to draw a direct line from, hip hop to the blues, ooh, that's going to take some work. You got to be a musicologist to make that connection, right? Our impetus for doing things and being creative is just building upon my last idea. Whatever my last idea was is what I'm adding on to. And it can take me in a variety of different directions because I don't have a system. The system is what sets these parameters and creates context for what I'm doing. So in the context of, for example, the one who's doing the Ileke ceremony, if you had a system, you would know that there's no way that you could be a person with this title that comes from a West African tradition doing an Ileke ceremony in the Afro-Cuban tradition. It's impossible. Those things don't go together. They are two different systems, right? And let me back up a little bit and help you appreciate, when I say a system is like your respiratory system. In very basic terms, your respiratory system is what? Your nose, your mouth, and your lungs. Let's say those are the major players. If you take the lungs out of the respiratory system, the system fails. It collapses. It is completely non-functional. If you take the mouth out, the system is severely, impaired. You take the nose out, same thing. You got to have all. The nose, the mouth, and the lungs are the major players in the respiratory system. You can't really function without it. You got an electrical system. You got a circulatory system, right? You just think about all the different systems that you're familiar with. They have parts, is what I'm saying. Every system is known for its main parts. And if you take any one of those parts out, either you completely disable the system or you impair the system so much that it can barely function. That's how Orisha is. It's a system. There is a set number of elements in that system. You cannot compromise them. And you can't just be mixing and matching and taking things from one system and putting it into the other. They don't work together that way, right? It just don't work together that way. Every system has its own distinct parts. And for us who are so fond of improvisation and spontaneity, a system can seem like it's cramping your style. A system can seem too much like a religion. And because of our hangover from Christianity and Islam, a lot of people who are practicing Orisha lifestyle are really, really, really aversive to having to, yield to a system. But you're going to have to get over it if you're serious about getting results. Unless you want to keep creating random, inexplicable problems for yourself, at some point you're going to grow up and you're going to accept the fact that there's a way to do things. And there are real concrete elements that go into doing things the right way. You can't escape it. You can't bypass it. You can't sidestep it, right? And so this is an important lesson for the leaders. These are for all the people who want to improve the world through positive influence. You need a system. Your system is what's going to inform your practice. And your practice is what is going to carry you over. Your practice is what's going to sustain you in high times and in low times. When you know everything that's going on and you know nothing that's going on. When you got everything in your hands and you got nothing in your hands. It's your practice that is going to enable you to continue in a steady and consistent manner. It's your practice, but your practice is rooted in your system, okay? And each system has its own practice, and each practice adheres to its own system. This is fundamental to your spiritual maturity. If you are ready to apply the practice of Orisha lifestyle toward helping to bring about the good condition for yourself and the ones that you're destined to serve, then I want you to visit obafemio.com or orishalifestyle.com and find out how Oloye, Obafemi Origunwa, can help you take your life and your practice to the highest level possible. I look forward to working with you. Bye for now. Odago.